My name's Ann Quirin. I'm one of the PMD technical writer editors. We're assisted today by Joyce Woods, who's our senior writer editor. We invited our admin folks to attend both workshops. Actually, everyone could attend either workshop, but we had a specific one which we wrapped up with this morning, the admin folks. And some of the admin folks who are more involved in reviewing technical documents have been attending our technical workshop. So it's good to have you with us, Alice. Our phone numbers are here for you, and our email addresses. We're in the global, of course. We have two teleworking editors in PMD. I'm one, Rachel Mitchell is the other. She's at Joint Base Lewis McChord in Washington, and I'm in Arizona, about an hour west of Fort Huachuca. So if you decide to call this number, it does reach me in Arizona, but please remember that right now there's a 3-hour time difference. So don't call me at 7:30 when you get to your office. I might sound a little sleepy, but it's great to be here, and we've presented, today is our 11th workshop for the center, and it's really been a fun experience to get around and meet so many people from the different programs and portfolios and put names with faces on the documents that I work on. So let's get started, and we'll talk a little about our goal. How we got started on these presentations last year was that we were receiving feedback from the center leadership, Mr. Resta in particular, and we met also with Mr. Sheehy, regarding the quality of writing of products coming through their desks in particular. And these are some of the areas that they identified as problem areas, and which we focused on primarily in our 2015 workshop. This year, these are the two key nuggets that have come up, and that is establishing a direct correlation among our findings, recommendations, and conclusions, and ensuring that the documents include actionable information as applicable. So we'll be focusing more on content than we are on some of the correctness and style, although we are going to touch on some of these today. So if you would like more information on these types of items, I would encourage you to view the 2015 workshop and let us know. We can send you the slides as well, and you can have the benefit of both. The presentation is 45 minutes and 54 seconds. So if you're having trouble sleeping, you might want to check it out. So, or if you need to kill an hour on a Friday afternoon. So let's go ahead. And I asked you to identify some of your projects, and that's because all of these are types of projects that we do see come through our shop. And the Army admin pubs are the ARs, the DAPAMs, and the TB meds that we work on for the center. And then we have, of course, just tremendous variety of other projects. These include also from the Visual Information Division. We're working in conjunction with them to develop right now the Health of the Force report. I don't know if anyone saw that. Last year was the first publication, and we're working on the current one, working closely with them. And the administrative pubs for the center, and we discuss those in more detail in our administrative workshop. And if anyone would like a copy of the administrative workshop, we have those slides available to you as well. Just email us and let us know. We'll be glad to send those out to you. Here are some of the go-to links for the information that is included in the workshop today. The Plain Language Act, the Government Style Manual, I should say Government Printing Office Style Manual, AR 2530, the Army Publishing Program, and our list continues with the accompanying PAM for that, the Correspondence Reg, which is 2550, May 2013 edition. And if any of you should know of admin folks who for some reason weren't able to attend one of the admin workshops, just let us know. We'll be glad to send the slides to them as well. AMED Staff Officer's Guide, and now we're going to stop on this one for a moment because the local reg, our PHC 25 30-2 is currently under revision. However, it is still valid and it is your go-to resource for, as Paul was asking me before the class, things like reference format, how to set up references, how to format a technical report, an information paper, tip, for example. So that is currently under revision, and what we're hoping to do is about this time next year be able to bring you the revised one and discuss how some of the things that have changed. As we go along, we'll be talking also about executive summaries, which are not covered in the current version, but we will be adding to the new version. Along with that, we'll be adding the newly minted technical report format, which is not to say it's a new format, it will be an updated format. And some of you are already aware that that's in progress. This is the link to the workshop 1, and we also can refer you to the Civilian Education System module on Army writing. There is a very good in-depth review in the basic course. Some of you may already have taken it. Okay, here we go. Plain language. Okay, first question. Why is it important that government communication be understood by the public? Any thoughts? Why do we care? Or do we? Do any of your pubs or, documents go outside the realm of DA or DOD?
Yes.
Yes? Can you give me an example? I don't know where that yes came from. Yes, sir.
Our environmental risk assessment reports usually go out for public review or are available to the public near installations. So
very good.
They are a key stakeholder.
Excellent. Great example. And that's Matt. Thank you, Matt. So, yes. Now, this is not always applicable. Like I said at the beginning, it's going to depend on your particular projects that you work on. However, the overarching goal of the Plain Language Writing Act is that the public can understand and use the material. And as some of you who've been working for the government a long time or been around those types of agencies know that this is an ongoing challenge. And so the Plain Language Writing Act includes federal plain writing guidelines to help us do that. And these are the three major segments of that communication. Communicate in a clear, concise manner, that your reader can understand the publication with one reading. And as I like to ask, if you're writing for a decision maker, why is this key? Well, if you're the decision maker, do you want to read something 6 times to find out what the person's recommendation is or what the key information is? Probably not. You're probably not going to have that kind of time. So that's our goal here, and ensure that your readers can find what they need, understand what they find, and use it to meet their needs or to fulfill the purpose. Let's go ahead. This is some of the elements of plain language and some of the things that it does not include. Now, when we talk about something like common everyday words, we are not saying that you are to dumb down your publication or your writing. What it means really is familiar. I would probably change this. This is right out of the guidelines, but I would probably change this to familiar everyday words. In other words, not to overburden the person with unfamiliar vocabulary. Use familiar terms, familiar acronyms. We know about writing out acronyms the first time they're used. So we're not oversimplifying the vocabulary, but we want to make sure that we're conveying our message clearly to the recipient. And we can also, in the past, there was a prohibition on jargon. Some of you may remember from previous Army writing programs, jargon was a big no-no. And now what we want to do is make sure that we don't include obscure or unfamiliar jargon, but if your customer is in your field, we're talking military, government, or medical, or legal, whatever the field might be, then we're fine with using jargon that's applicable to that field if the reader is going to understand it. So there's no hard and fast prohibition against jargon. Next. These are the key points that we included in Workshop 1. So if you're interested in learning more about any of these, I would recommend that you take a look at those slides from 2015. Or if you find that your question about any one of these might not have been answered, let us know and we can direct you to some specific resources for those. We'll even come to your desk. I met with a young lady last week who was publishing a scientific article for publication. She was one of 4 authors on this, and I had looked at it back in April. So after our workshop with her group, she said, "Do you think you could look at that again? Because so-and-so has, been working on it since then." So we sat down together and in an afternoon and took a look at it. So unfortunately, I can't do that when I'm not here on site, but I'll be glad to work with you one-on-one by phone or email for sure. Let's go ahead. And one of the things we borrowed from the civilian education system is the inverted pyramid to remind us to put the bottom line up front. I'm using an example that is local, but you have to promise not to tell the person if you know who this is. Did anybody see an email recently about how the IT is addressing the issue of pushing patches and fixes for people using the VPN? It may have only gone out to some of us, but the email was about this long and it was all this IT jargon. Did you see it? Yeah. And where was that? The bottom line was at the bottom, which basically said those of us who use the VPN full-time telework now no longer have to worry about interruptions because they're going to push the patches and the fixes differently. Whereas now, when we get those network advisories that say, the 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. they're going to do whatever, then we're interrupted at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So we know we have to be off the network by that time and just work offline. Well, it had to be like this much of IT jargon and whatnot, and then at the bottom it said, tell your full-time teleworkers that we're going to be changing this procedure and they will no longer experience VPN interruptions. So unfortunately, we still have examples to draw from time to time. So keep your bottom line up front, then your supporting information, and include your recommendations and conclusions based on that information. Okay, next. We like to throw a table example in here. This was at someone's request that we included a table example. It seems like it would be a common sense sort of thing, but can you try to imagine all this information stuffed into a paragraph? No. Definitely would be difficult to read. It would be difficult to find the key information. This way, of course, you can go right to what you need. There it is in an organized fashion. Let's go ahead. Someone asked us recently when we got to this slide if bulleted lists are allowed. Yes, they are. And there's one example here as to when you might want to use one. You've got a sentence that is 6 lines long, contains several different aspects in a list that you can easily find and read in the bulleted form. Do any of you have questions about bullets or dots or ABCs? Yes, there's one.
What is IET?
Sorry?
What is IET? It's an acronym for something. I don't know what.
Oh, yes, we don't know. It's initial entry training in this I pulled this out of an actual document, so this acronym is not spelled out here because it was spelled out earlier. It's initial entry training. Yes.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you. Yeah, I had to look for it there. So very good. And same with PT. It would have been identified earlier in the text. Okay. Yeah, and there's IET again. Now a little bit about active and passive voice. This definition is from AR 2550, which is the correspondence reg. You'll find it in many different places. We also have a study packet available just on this topic if it's an area that you feel you would like some additional help with. An alumni of the center, I'll say, a person who's now retired, developed a packet for us that most of which is included in last year's workshop. So we really went into depth about active and passive voice. Today we're going to highlight it for you. It emphasizes the actor of the sentence. Who or what is performing the action, person, place, or thing. It shows who does the action and puts that actor before the verb as opposed to after. And the end result is that you have shorter sentences that are more concise. That's not the overall goal, and I'll show you why we say that in a few minutes, because it's not always necessary to use active voice. We'll show you why. But let's go ahead. So some of the ways to eliminate passive voice are to put the actor before the verb or use the imperative style. There are acceptable uses, which are when the actor is unknown or doesn't need to be identified. If we say, for example, your leave has been approved. So technically, as a matter of style, that would be a passive sentence. Who approved your leave? Well, who approves your leave? Who approves your leave? The supervisor. Do you need necessarily to say the supervisor has approved your leave? You kind of assume it's going to be the supervisor, right? We don't really care who approves our leave. All we want to know is that it's been approved so we can go down to Ocean City next week. So in that case, passive voice is fine. Your leave has been approved. We don't need to identify who that was. In scientific writing, we use it to convey objectivity and eliminate opinion. And we have some examples coming up. Now, here's one where the doer is not named. So the passive verb construction has a particular appearance. Can anybody pick it out? We're looking for a form of to be and yeah, over here?
Has been.
Has been, right. And the past participle identified. Okay, so has been identified. Very good. Sorry I didn't bring any candy with me. No M&Ms today. Has been identified. Now, so who identified that this is the case for this information? We don't know. Well, the sentence didn't say, this is from an actual report, so I added somebody. I added the CDC. So by doing that, we've done a couple of things. We've put that actor before, well, in this case, we didn't put it before the verb, but what we did was identify the actor. And then we have also a little more oomph to that sentence in terms of where did this information come from? Under whose authority do we know this is the case? So that's the fix for that one. On this one, where's the passive construction? First of all, same idea, form of to be plus the ed verb. Don't be shy.
Must be balanced.
Thank you. Must be balanced. Right here. Okay. So who needs to balance their exercise? In particular? Anybody? Or is this more of a general statement? It's more of a general statement, or what we call an implied you. So to do that, we take that verb, put it at the beginning of the sentence and make it an imperative or directive style sentence. Balance the higher intensity exercise. So if this looks like Greek to you and you're like, what the heck is she talking about? To be and past participle and all this stuff. Come see us after class and we can direct you to some more specific guidance on how this works. So just going to provide an overview for you today. Now we're going to shift gears a little bit and talk about content. So first question we want to ask when we are preparing to write a project is, what's the purpose? So what do we want it to do? Can someone give me an example from something that they typically work on of a purpose statement? Something recent? I'm going to pick on Paul because I remember his name. What kind of purpose statement would you include in something that you might write? Would it apply to what you write, first of all?
A purpose statement. Yeah, we have purpose statements stating on why we're doing the work.
Right. Well, let's go with that. Can you give us an example?
The purpose of most of my reports is to address compliance with the Emergency Planning and Community Right to Know Act.
Very good.
To the facility.
All right, super. Right, so then your reader knows that
There is no ifs, ands, or buts.
that's
why
it.
I'm doing
Right. That is what you're about in that. Very good. Okay. Excellent. So that is key. Your purpose obviously needs to set up the reader for what is to follow. And these are just some examples of the who, what, when, where, and how. And someone pointed out to us that I keep saying that, but there's no when on this slide. So we will tack it into here. When and where, where did you go and when? If it was a site visit or a survey or whatever. So it's just some ideas for how to get started. But the key to remember, of course, is that what follows that purpose statement is going to fulfill or support that purpose statement. Let's go ahead. Actionable information. That is something that was specifically mentioned by the leadership this year, Mr. Resta and Dr. Szewski in particular. Actionable information, it's really, it's self-defining really, but we are going to expand on that a little bit. Useful data, specific, consistent, credible, and we're getting back to that idea of understanding the material in one reading. Supplies immediately available information to enable decision makers. We don't want to put that person on a wild goose chase to find the key information back on page 22 when it needs to be on page maybe 3 or 4, etc. We can present in paragraphs, bulleted lists, tables, anything that works best for the type of pub that you're writing. And certainly graphs, charts, and other illustrations are appropriate. Who uses graphics in their table? When I say graphics, I just mean tables, charts, graphs, anything like that. Paul does. I see some heads nodding. Right, good. And all of these kinds of things are what comprise the findings, or sometimes it's referred to as discussion, conclusions, and recommendations. So this is the meat and potatoes, as it were. Okay. So here's an example. You're looking to identify health risks or hazards. You're going to present all the findings related to the purpose of the report. That does not mean necessarily every teeny tiny thing that you saw or found, but those things that are related to what you're about. Providing, yes, Paul?
There's no mention of tense.
Tense.
Are we talking about what occurred?
Yes.
We came, we saw, now we're writing the report.
Yes. So your question, right? Yes, you have it has occurred. That's a good question because we see some variance on that. If the action has been completed, it is going to be in the past tense. your report will be in the past tense. That's a good question. Okay, thank you.
Question about that.
Yes.
If you're writing a study and the information that's being analyzed is present in that report, so this report presents, past or present, I see people go either way.
Yes.
It's a field study, you collect data 3 months ago,
Right.
analyze it a month ago, clearly in the past, but if you're presenting a study, which my work unit does a lot, that the actual findings and analysis are all contained, everything is happening and now presented for the first time in this report.
Yes.
Is it active
Yes.
or past?
No, that is a very good question because it doesn't have to be simple past then. It actually fits what the description that you're saying.
Because I have arguments within my work unit. Actually,
Oh, do you?
So it creates delay, and so
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely fine. Yep. And if you're ever stuck, send them to us. Only call Joyce, she's closer. No, I'm kidding.
And if you're doing field work and you're just saying like a 1.3 acre parcel in Fort Detrick, well, it's still there, so that would be written in the present tense, or Fort Detrick is in Fort Detrick, Maryland, or whatever.
Right.
So if it's a given, but if it's something that you did, if you dug, if you analyzed, if you wore gloves, things like that, then those are things that you did in the past to prepare your
It should be
report.
kept in the past.
Mhm.
Yes. Very good. Very good. So again, we want to look at related findings, sufficient information. Are you answering the question that you're seeking to answer, and including positive as well as negative findings. Sometimes that can get tricky, but you want to present obviously a balanced picture of the situation, so you're going to need to include both positive and negative findings. Question?
Well, it's not a question, but one of the things that we often recommend, so if I'm reviewing something that has positive and negative in it, what we often will tell them is that they need to acknowledge the negative but brief the positive.
Very
So
good.
it's a different way of looking at it, where you have to acknowledge or you have to at least state the negative. But
Right.
You should emphasize.
Thank
the
you. That's
positive.
great. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Right. Acknowledge the negative and brief the positive. Good. Very good. Next. Your conclusions are going to be when we say the project officer, that's the person that's writing, that's you. Your assessment of the situation. You are interpreting those findings or the discussion, and you're making sure that those conclusions are based on those. Okay. So this is where the correlation starts to kick in. Let's go ahead. Then we look at our recommendations, which again correlated to those conclusions. Suggested actions or policies based on the conclusions. Do you want to be seeing any new material in recommendations? Nope. We do. We see it. We see new material in conclusions too. So we want to make sure, again, that correlation carries through. And eliminating extraneous data or information. Here's where we like to mention tables in particular, because if you have a lot of data, you may not need it all in the body of the report, but you can certainly include it in appendices as reference to some of the points that you're making. But to have 25 tables in the body of a report is going to be a little overwhelming to your reader. So now, and I have to add the caveat to that unless the customer wants to see it that way, because we have customers who have specific guidance that they want followed for reports and whatnot. So we always have to keep in mind we're writing for that audience, particular audience. What's needed to improve the situation? Again, the recommendations, providing the courses of action, and making sure they're based on the findings and conclusions. So it may sound like we're repeating ourselves a little bit on this, but we are, because we know that the leadership in particular is looking for this to correlate. They're looking, and they are sending things back. when they don't see it. So now we've got one, I think the next slide is the one for, revision. So here's an original, this is not from a center report, this is just from a module that we borrowed from. So here's the original and the revision, but I'd like you to look at the revision with an eye toward whether you think it could use a little further improvement, or would you be happy with that as a recommendation? It's also in your packet. We're on page 22 if it's easier for you to read the page.
A long first sentence revision. Really long.
Long first sentence in the revision.
Up in that original, who can say, what is that recommendation? What's the recommendation?
Maintenance program.
Right.
Okay. Maintenance program, okay. And then when we get down to here, your name again?
Steve.
What Steve was saying is, it's a long first sentence, and so you get to that nugget about the maintenance program, it's first mentioned here, then here. So this whole section up to probably about the comma could probably go away. That seems to be the consensus from our other workshops, and I see a lot of heads nodding, and they're not all because you're falling asleep, hopefully. No, so yeah, I mean, let's get to the meat of it, which is we recommend the following program, and then you would go into your bullets as to what that program should include if you're going to go into that level of detail. So while it does clarify the problem, it still, it could be better. And we actually chopped this down from an earlier version, which was maybe 3 lines longer than this one. So there's definitely room for improvement there. Good. Now I think we have one for you to work on. We do. You can take a look at your packet or just read it off the slide. These are from a center report. This is the conclusion and the recommendation that came in with the report. Are they correlated? And if they're not, why not? And how would you improve them? We're going to give you a couple minutes to take a look at those. And we understand you don't have the benefit of the rest of the report, but just working with what's there, think about whether you think they're correlated. So how would you rate this as a conclusion? Say on a scale of 1 to 5, how would you rate it as a conclusion? I can tell you I'd probably give it -5, but any thoughts on what issues we might want to address in that paragraph? Too long. Good.
Well, they've included a conclusion and a recommendation, so they need to drop off however. From however down, that's recommendation. That's not a conclusion.
Right. We've got a conclusion and a recommendation in the same paragraph. Okay, good. And the same sentence.
Could be a conclusion. Maybe they discovered in their study that there are workers without certification.
Right, they could have. Right, which
It's
is
hidden, you don't really know.
exactly the point. Good, right. Joyce, you want to mention the line workers versus maintenance?
In your conclusion, it says provide your wasp spray to line workers, where in the recommendation it's saying discontinue handing out to non-certified maintenance workers. So what I come across a lot of times is that I would ask the project officer, are line workers, non-certified maintenance workers, are they one and the same personnel? So you want to make sure that you're consistent when you're identifying specific people, and what their responsibility is, or who you're making your conclusions and recommendations about.
Good. Any other thoughts, comments?
So what's the difference between the conclusion and the recommendation? Do they correlate? First lines. The conclusion is saying an effective method is to provide wasp spray, but what's your recommendation?
Take it away.
Yeah,
They contradict each other.
they do. Yes, they do. Anything else with the recommendation?
So if you were the decision maker, what would you be asking this individual, or what would you want to know that's not, what questions does it raise? Well, what exactly is it that you're telling me we should do? What is the recommendation? So, and then we bring in some new items here, the empty canisters and the coordination piece. So, yeah. So you get the idea of what not to do. So, great, good feedback. Let's go ahead. And our next topic today, we're on page 24. We want to spend a little time on executive summaries because this is, we have a lot of inconsistency across the center regarding executive summaries. So we're happy to tell you that we are including a prototype executive summary in the newly revised PHC Reg 2530-2. When we revise it, it will have a sample exec sum in there for you. And what the leadership would like us to emphasize is that it is a 1 to 2 page overview. If the publication is longer, it's going to warrant a longer exec sum. 5 pages is acceptable. However, as someone pointed out in another workshop, if you have a 3-page report, does it need an executive summary? No, it does not. So you're not going to have a 2-page exec sum on a 3-page report. It's just, logic and common sense will tell us that. So what you want to do is give the customer or the decision maker the key information from the body of the pub. To do that, your content's going to vary based on what the type of publication it is, but there is no prohibition against including figures or tables in your exec sum. If you have a summary table, a summary chart, graph, illustration that conveys the information clearly, by all means you can include it in your executive summary. You're not going to copy paste every table out of the body of the report, however, into the executive summary. The key word being summary. And if you need some help with those, again, we're here to help with those. Just give us a call. Now, this is a format that you may recognize. It is what we're currently looking toward for the key elements of an executive summary, the purpose, and there may be a subparagraph. You may need to include some findings here, so we have a little wiggle room there, but this is what your decision maker is going to want to see: the purpose, the conclusions, and the recommendations. In other words, the meat of the matter. And we've highlighted the active voice, writing in active voice as much as possible. Another little nugget that's come our way recently is some discrepancy in the WBS numbers. And the key point we want to get across there is that the last 2 digits of that number reflect the study period or the assessment period, the fiscal year in which that occurred. It does not reflect the year in which you are writing the report. And recently someone asked us to change one, and because there was a 2-year difference between the study and the report. That's not something that we do. The suffix reflects the study period, the fiscal year it was conducted. So this is a frame of reference for you, and we'll go ahead. Last but not least, we were asked to include this year as well, and that is the issue of version control. Anybody ever have an issue with version control? You think you're on the final and you're not, and then all of a sudden, guess what? Somebody has changes, and wait, I saw that last week. Someone's smiling. Is it Bob? Yep. So the first thing that we want to get across is if you have, for example, a DAPM or an AR, something of that nature, that we are going to have on file. It could also be a technical guide, basically anything that has come through PMD. We will have the most recent Word version. What you see posted in the library is the PDF version. You can't really work with a PDF to revise a publication. You can, but it's very cumbersome, and you really want to be working in Word. So first thing out of the box is contact one of us and ask us for the most recent version in Word. Then, whether or not you use track changes or whatnot to revise your file before you send it to PMD for tech editing, assuming, of course, that you will be sending it over to us for tech editing. Make sure that you've resolved any content questions. If you've sent it around for peer review and people have commented, make sure those comments are deleted and they have been addressed before you send the document forward to us for review. Because we won't be able to tell if the changes that are in there are reflecting those comments, or if it's still pending, if someone's decision is still pending on a certain paragraph, whatever. So make sure we get the clean copy with all comments and changes dealt with. We ask that you add your initials to the file name, and then after we work on it and send it back to you, we will add our initials to the file name. Now that's one way to do it. Another way to do it would be V1, V2, V3, versions like that, or revision 1, revision 2. So this is just an example, but the key information here is that we have a way of identifying that file as it goes back and forth, so we know which version we're working in. Ms. Gibson likes to use the example of someone sending a report with a very short suspense, and if you have a very short suspense, we will absolutely help you accommodate. We'll accommodate that and help you get your project out on time. But what happened to her not too long ago was that the version that came in had a short suspense. She worked on it, nothing else, just that. And like 2 days later, when the suspense was almost due, what do you think happened? Somebody calls her and says, "Oh, we had a meeting. Oh, we've changed, page 4, and we have a new version now. We want you to review that." Meanwhile, the suspense date is looming, the next day. And so it was, you can imagine the chaos that followed. So we want to also make sure that when you send something to us, and we have a PMD work order page that you can use, and you can add your suspense date to that page when you send the document over. Ms. Gibson then assigns it to an editor, and that editor will contact you to let you know that, "Hi, I'm so-and-so, and I'm going to be working on your document." So it's very key to keep that chain of communication open and clear. Okay. So we're now coming to the end of today's presentation. These are some of the key points. Does anyone have a question or comment or from any of the material that they haven't had a chance to share or ask about? I don't know if that's a good thing or bad thing, but I'll invite you to email us or call us if you have suggestions for how we might improve the presentation. If there's an area that you would like more information about, just let us know. And we appreciate the opportunity to come and speak with you today. Thanks very much for coming. And that's a wrap.